You know what's better than playing a roguelike? Breaking a roguelike. A lot of discourse on roguelikes tend to highlight elements such as RNG, randomization, and progression. These are widely considered essential to keeping the genre fresh and compelling. And that's certainly true. I've talked about all these elements myself. But the more roguelikes I play, the more I mull it over, I am convinced there is one more essential element to the roguelikes that I love the most, and that's the ability to make a god run and break the game. Now, not all roguelikes are designed with this type of run in mind. Does this mean roguelikes that don't scale toward god runs are inherently inferior? Well, yes. But actually, no. But also, yes. God of War Valhalla and The Last of Us No Return are both DLC standalone roguelike modes for their respective games. Both DLCs are worth a playthrough if you have the base games already and if you would like a challenging twist on some familiar gameplay mechanics, as well as, in the case of Valhalla, a surprisingly well-handled example of roguelike game loops paired with competent meta-narrative. Whatever the strengths and shortcomings of both of these games, one thing that stood out to me was the inability to scale the game toward truly unique game-breaking runs. Even when you have the absolute best RNG giving you the best abilities or loadouts in the games, neither DLC seems designed to potentially arrive at a staggeringly overpowered god run. And it's honestly disappointing. I can almost understand this in the case of No Return. In a game as grounded toward relative realism and believability as The Last of Us, you wouldn't expect the type of crazy elements that are essential for a god run to even exist. But these OP runs could have easily been managed in Valhalla, where you are a literal god, the god of war no less. And while it may have been a pretty firm departure from the combat formula you find in the core God of War games, I would have gladly traded the familiar ebb and flow of God of War's combat for the thrilling experience of a god run in Valhalla, letting us see Kratos' godly might scaled far beyond what the core games normally allow us for the sake of preserving the balance and challenge in those games. And therein lies the crux. There are many roguelikes that are designed to deliver a consistent experience that doesn't waver far from that intentionally balanced game. Even if the game is deliberately challenging, that challenge is often dependent on a balanced experience. After all, if you're able to achieve a god run, either deliberately or entirely via RNG, challenge tends to go out the window. Spelunky 1 and 2 are widely considered an OG and a GOAT and other descriptive acronyms of the roguelike genre. It has no meta progression or unlockables, meaning whatever advantage you come upon is limited to that individual run. It is punishingly difficult and challenging, especially before you really understand the many intricacies and details of how the game works. Even after you've pieced the game together, there is no real point in the game, as far as I've seen, that gives you an opportunity to ascend to that god run status, mowing through all opposition with ultra powerful power-ups and systems that allow you to turn the game on its head. It's just not built that way. Now, granted, I haven't played super deep into Spelunky, so maybe you get to some turning point later in the game that allows you to really turn the tide in your favor and put the game on the back foot. But given what I've experienced during my time with it and the general setup of how the game arranges its challenges and balancing, I just don't see it happening. Leave me a comment and let me know if I'm wrong on this one, but my overall point remains. So we have roguelikes that are balanced for a consistent experience whose challenge remains fairly level throughout the game, and that's fine. There are plenty of roguelikes that trend toward this gameplay balance that are great games that I've thoroughly enjoyed. But for me, the roguelikes I have the most fun with and spend the most time playing all share the same secret sauce. They not only throw game balance to the wayside and allow for some game-breaking runs, they deliberately incorporate this type of runs into their design. The range of runs in the Binding of Isaac varies so wildly it's almost dizzying, with item RNG that can result in a run that is virtually impossible for all except the most cracked Isaac addicts to run so supremely overpowering it would take an act of God himself for you to lose, with synergies between items and power-ups that will allow you to melt an entire screen as soon as you enter the room. A dizzying array of effects and attack variants that render you unable to even figure out what's happening half the time. And that's not even counting the real game breaks, the dark magic of infinite duping and other brain-twisting methods that allow players to go past the limits of even the most OP loadouts, because you can just keep on getting more and more items and power-ups at will until you have outscaled anything that the game is able to contend with, transcending Isaac into a true being of eldritch horror that, you know, still cries a lot. Eldritch horror nonetheless. Speaking of horrors, Vampire Survivor packs more monsters into a square inch of land than any game on the market. And while it isn't a horror game, it is a game that is meant to be broken by design, scaling its difficulty and, more pointedly, its power-ups to the ceiling and beyond. Every run inevitably becomes a bloodbath as your weapons get ever more powerful with level ups and upgrades, all while you unlock more and more potential instruments of slaughter. This is countered by the sheer overwhelming number of enemies constantly surrounding you, growing both stronger and denser in numbers until they pack into every last pixel of your screen space. While this can present a major challenge, particularly on later levels, if players have the knowledge to bring out the most power and evolution potential in their weapons and items, even the strongest army of monsters are mere roaches, while you are an absolute psychopath using tactical nukes to address a roach problem. Now, some people will say that Vampire Survivor is a glorified number simulator, and they're right. And it's awesome, because the numbers go up, the lights flash, and the sounds go boom. I'll kill enough monsters and demons to populate a not insignificant sized country. And if that isn't appealing to you, then yeah, I get that. But and also, go kick rocks. Vampire Survivor is a game that defies its own premise, taking you from a mere survivor of the undead, demonic, vampiric, etc. horde, and instead making you its worst nightmare, giving you a 30-minute self-contained instance of struggling on the ragged edge of death before inheriting all the powers of God and anime to lay waste to all who dare to gather before your deadly laser light show extravaganza. Risk of Rain 2 likewise has God runs hardwired into its existence. Not only does its systems allow infinite scaling power for both the player and the enemies, with the difficulty endlessly boosting with playtime and your own power increasing with endlessly stackable items, but the game also gives you a powerful tool, the Command Artifact. The Command Artifact enables players to take RNG out of the mix and manually select the items they obtain. This results in, essentially, build crafting, with players able to stack dozens, if not hundreds, of individual items, scaling the effects higher and higher until the game can become spectacularly broken, sometimes literally, as the game can't even keep up with how drastically some item effects scale and ends up crashing entirely. There's many a fan of Risk of Rain who live for the joy of seeing what will emerge when they stack items into the hundreds and the game-breaking effects that follow. While Risk of Rain 2 is an excellent game all around that I may be making a huge video about as we speak, stay tuned for that, it's the ability to make the whole game laughably broken to the point that the game itself shits bricks that I find the most compelling. The God runs are what I find myself returning for, the enjoyment of scaling my survivor well beyond any sensible norm. This commitment to allowing players the freedom to shape their runs how they want is a form of play that never fails to be wildly entertaining, weird, and refreshingly satisfying. Most roguelikes share a number of core elements that fans of the genre are drawn to. RNG makes things unpredictable and unexpected. Progression in all its forms and flavors give players a slow drip feed of accomplishment and empowerment. but it's the game-breaking god runs that I find myself chasing in roguelikes. That thrill of not only overcoming the challenges of an already difficult genre, but blowing it out of the water, outpacing it until that challenge is laughable. And while there are plenty of roguelikes designed for a more balanced and stable experience that I have thoroughly enjoyed, it's always the ones that are designed with full intent to be broken that I love best. The ones I can start up one more run and maybe, just maybe, I get to become an unstoppable force for one round. Because it's one thing to win. It's one thing to dominate, but it's another thing entirely to fracture the fabric of reality with the unrelenting power of a cosmic being beyond all understanding. And if you don't even have the chance to feel that way, are you really winning?